642, Ancient World, beginning to 500 AD Bronze Age civilizations 5. Name of the civilization Modern area River Valley 1. Mesopotamian civilization Iraq Tigris and 4000 BC 6th center BC Euphrates 1765 BC 250 BC Mesopotamian civilization, the oldest civilization of the world. Mesopotamia means land between the rivers. Mesopotamia is the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Mesopotamia comprises 4 regions: Sumer, southernmost region, Babylonia and Akkad, middle region, and Assyria, northernmost region. Hammurabi, c. 2100 BC, the greatest Babylonian ruler, united the whole of what is now called Iraq into a single kingdom. Hammurabi gave his people a code of laws famous as Hammurabi's Code. His code covered every aspect of life. His code was based on the law of eye for eye and tooth for tooth, i.e., the law of tit for tat. The Hittites, who came from Asia Minor, now Turkey, and destroyed the Babylonian kingdom, were the first to make regular use of horses for war chariots and to make iron implements. The potter's wheel was perhaps first used in Mesopotamia. The Mesopotamians also seem to have been the first to make glassware. The Sumerians were the first to evolve a proper system of writing. This system is called cuneiform. The cuneiform script was invented in c. 3400 BC. This script is found on clay tablets. The cuneiform script was deciphered by Henry Rawlinson. The Mesopotamian system of counting is known as sexagesimal because the Mesopotamian people counted by 60s as we count by tens, decimal system. Their sexagesimal system is no longer in use, but we still use it as the basis of division of time into minutes and seconds and of a circle into 360 degrees. In geometry, the Mesopotamians had discovered what was later called the Pythagoras theorem. In astronomy, the Mesopotamians made astonishing progress. They could calculate the length of the day and the night. They divided the whole day into 24 hours. They divided the sky into 12 parts, each assigned a 642 name. This has come down to us as the 12 signs of zodiac Orshis-Sweckelthum. In India, another remarkable achievement of the Mesopotamians was the invention of a lunar calendar based on the moon. Civilization. Egypt is called the gift of the Nile. Historians divide the history of Egypt into 3 periods: the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. The Old Kingdom is also called the Age of the Pyramids. The Egyptian king was called the Pharaoh. The Egyptians were worshippers of nature and the sun was their most important god. The Egyptians believed that after death both the body and the soul live, while other people believed that only the soul lives and the body perishes. So the Egyptians took great care in preserving the body of the dead. The body was embalmed in spices and then wrapped in stripes of fine linen. Such a preserved body is called a mummy. The mummy was put in a wooden box and buried. The pyramids and the Sphinx are the 2 specimens of Egyptian architectural excellence. The pyramids were the tombs of kings and they contained the mummies of these monarchs. The most imposing of all is the Great Pyramid at Gizeh in Cairo, built by the king Cheops Khufu of the Old Kingdom. The Great Pyramid is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Sphinx is a mythological animal with the body of a lion and the head of a man. Each Sphinx was carved out of a single solid rock. The Egyptian script, known as hieroglyphics, was invented in c. 3100 BC. The script is found on papyrus sheets made of reeds. The Egyptian script hieroglyphic script was deciphered by Champollion. The Egyptians developed a decimal system of numeration. The crowning achievement of the Egyptians was the solar calendar. Harappan civilization. The Harappan civilization extended over a bigger area than any of the contemporary civilization. Note, for details, see Indus civilization. Chinese civilization. The earliest Chinese civilization is the Shang civilization. The Shang dynasty was overthrown by the Zhou dynasty. The Chinese script is a pictographic underscore script. It is remarkable that the Chinese script has changed very little since the earliest times. 643, 90 Lucents. The Chinese calendar, solar lunar calendar, was a combination of solar and lunar calendar. The Chinese were the first to calculate the length of the year as 365 days. In 3rd century BC, the Qin dynasty became important. To keep out invaders from the north, he began construction of a wall known as the Great Wall. The Han dynasty followed the Qin dynasty in 202 BC, and the Han emperors ruled China for almost 400 years. The political practices of the Han rulers were greatly influenced by the teachings of Confucius. During the Han rule, to qualify for appointment, the young men had to pass through an elaborate system of examination before they were chosen. Such scholar officials came to be known as mandarins. The Chinese was the first civilization in history to have a system of selecting public officials on the basis of education and competitive examination. Under the Hans, silk was a principal item of export. 2 main roads were built across the Great Wall to carry on trade with the West. The 2 major religions of ancient China are Taoism, based on the teachings of Lao Tse, b. 604 BC, and Confucianism, based on the teachings of Confucius, 551 BC 479 BC. Confucius was a contemporary of Mahavira and Buddha. Buddhism was brought into China by Indians during the Han rule. The Great Wall is a mighty monument to the building skill of ancient China. This wall, built of stone and earth to a height of 6 meters, extends over 2,400 kilometers. The Chinese script was standardized by the Qin ruler. The Chinese script spread to other countries also. It influenced the Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese scripts. In the 1st century AD, paper was invented in China. The invention of paper and its importance in spreading knowledge within the outside China makes it one of the great contributions of China to the world. Some of the first historical works in the world were written in China. Each dynasty compiled its own history. The pattern of these histories was set by Sima Qian, 1st or 2nd century BC, who is commonly remembered as the Herodotus of China. The water clock, abacus, umbrella were invented by Chinese. In the 2nd century AD, Chinese invented seismograph. Iranian civilization in the middle of the 6th century BC, a powerful empire, Achaemenid Empire, arose in Iran, Persia. The founder of this empire was Cyrus with his capital at Pasargadae. He was succeeded by Darius I, 522 BC, 486 BC. The empire reached its greatest extent under him and covered entire Iran, Mesopotamia, Syria, Egypt, Asia Minor, and northwestern India. He built a new capital at Persepolis. 650, knowledge Darius I and his successors were involved in wars the Greek states. They were defeated by the Alexander dealt a final blow to the empire during reign of Darius III. In the 3rd century AD, a new and powerful empire, Sassanid Empire, arose in Iran. This empire was founded by Ardashir in 226 AD, held sway in up to the middle of the 7th century AD. The Arabs, who emerged as a strong power after rise of Islam, conquered Iran in 651 AD. The Achaemenids had introduced the use of money coins of gold and silver on a large scale throughout the empire. Iran, in ancient times, produced a number of famous sailors and explorers. One of them, Scylax, undertook a voyage from the mouth of Indus to Egypt on orders of Darius. The main religion of the ancient Iranians was Zoroastrianism. This religion was founded by Zarathustra or Zoroaster, 628 BC 551 BC, as the Greeks called him in 7th century BC. The teachings of Zarathustra are recorded in the Zendavesta, the holy book of Parsis. Zarathustra said that the world consists of two forces, good and evil. The god, Ahura Mazda, represents the forces of good, and Ahriman, the forces of evil. The sun and the fire came to be worshipped as visible symbols of Ahura Mazda, who represents light. Both Judaism and Christianity were indebted to Zoroastrianism. During the Achaemenid Empire, the official language was Aramaic. The Sassanids revived Old Persian and made it the official language of their empire. But then a new script called Pahlavi had also developed. The best-known ancient literature of Iran is the Zendavesta, which contains the work of Zarathustra. Greek civilization. The early Greeks, or the Hellenes, like the Aryans in India, lived in tribes, each composed of a number of families under a leader. A group of tribes had a king. The main occupations were agriculture and herding. The early Greeks had many gods whom they imagined to be like human beings, though more powerful and immortal. Zeus was the god of the sky and hence caused thunder. Poseidon, god of the sea, raised storms that sank ships. Apollo, the sun god, could reveal the future. Athena was the goddess of victory and patroness of the arts. Dionysus was the god of wine, and there were many others. The Greeks thought their gods lived on Mount Olympus. Around 800 BC, groups of Greek villages began joining into larger units to form city-states. At the highest point in a city-state, an acropolis or citadel was built for defense, and Thesady spread around the acropolis. Such cities were Sparta, Athens, Macedonia, Corinth, Thebes, and others. Sparta and Athens were Thetwa, most important city-states. The Spartans' main concern was with militarism and war. Some exatha the word Spartanis often mean militaristic. 651. World his. Spartans else to Greek were culture. Fine soldiers, but they contributed little. Mineral trade occupied, not different the developed. City-state and deposits. From gradually Sparta. Of Athens and the Athenians peacefully had developed territories excellent buoyant along Ilt it ruled militarism harbors Apollines had Ospers quite been haddened. Most important culture. Ruler Pericles of Athens, 469 BC, 429 BC, was the Athens-Iranian battle of Persian Marathon King, 490 Darius BC, the at Ma Greek Rathan defeated near. The from Peloponnesian 431 BC to 404 BC, war, ended between in tragedy Sparta, 4 in Athens. Philip of Macedonia conquered most of the states in the years following Athens' defeat. Then his son, Alexander, set out at the age of 20 to conquer the world. During the 13 years, 336 BC, 323 BC, he compelled all Greece to accept his leadership and conquered the Achaemenid Empire. This brought him to the borders of India where he defeated King Porus on the Jhelum in 326 BC. He sailed down the Indus and then returned to Mesopotamia where he died of fever in 323 BC at the age of 32. Alexander's conquests brought many important changes to the world. Trade between Europe and Asia developed. Many new cities were founded. In the 2nd century BC, the Roman Empire started expanding eastward. As a result of Roman conquests, almost the entire territory of the Greeks and their empire became a part of the Roman Empire. Contributions of the Greek civilization. The glory of Greece that the world has never forgotten was largely the glory of Athens at the time of Pericles. The Olympic Games were first held in 776 BC by the Greeks in honor of god Zeus at Mount Olympus, Olympia, in Greece, hence the name, and they continued till 394 AD. From 394 AD these games started degenerating, and by 580 AD they altogether vanished. They were banned by the Roman Emperor Theodosius as pagan manifestations. It was the French baron, Pierre de Coubertin, who, nearly over 1,500 years in after 1894 they and last the ancient modern Olympics series of revived these games. The Olympic Games started in 1896 at Athens, and since then they are being held every fourth year. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey are among the best epics of the world. The Iliad is the story of siege and destruction of the Odyssey city of Troy, describes as the western the adventurous coast of Asia and minor homecoming from Troy of a Greek hero Odysseus. The founder of the Greek tragedy was Aeschylus, author of Prometheus Bound. Sophocles is considered to be the greatest of Greek tragedians. His famous plays are Oedipus Rex, Antigone, and Electra. Aristophanes is considered to be the master of Greek comedy. Greece produced e.g. Herodotus, some of, known the worlds as the earliest father Greathoff. Historians. History, Thucydides, Plutarch, etc. 652-91. The most famous philosophers of Greece were Socrates, Plato, disciple of Socrates and author of Republic, and Aristotle, disciple of Plato. Aristotle was both philosopher and scientist. He made important contributions to philosophy, medicine, biology, and astronomy. He believed in the principle of the golden mean, that is neither extreme luxury nor self-denial. The Greek made many contributions to mathematics, especially to geometry, as is seen in the works of Euclid and Pythagoras. In medicine, Hippocrates laid the foundation of modern medicine. He is known as the father of medicine. The most important astronomers were Aristarchus, Ptolemy, Hipparchus, Eratosthenes, etc. Ptolemy's belief that the Earth was the center of the universe was accepted as truth until the 16th century. Eratosthenes prepared a fairly accurate map of the globe and was the first to suggest that one could reach India from Europe by sailing west. The Temple of Athena, the Parthenon, is the best example of Greek architecture. Myron and Phidias are two best-known sculptors of ancient Greece. It was Phidias whom Pericles appointed to supervise the construction of the Acropolis in Athens. Civilization. The center of the Roman civilization was Italy, the peninsula that projects into the Mediterranean Sea in the west of Greece. The river Tiber, on which the city of Rome is located, runs through the central part of the peninsula. The city of Rome was founded about 1000 BC by Romulus in the district of Latium. The language of the ancient Romans, Latin, gets its name from the word Latium. The early Romans had a king, an assembly, and a senate. Towards the end of the 6th century BC the king was overthrown and a republic was established. Under the Republic, the Romans conquered other parts of the peninsula, and by 265 BC controlled all of Italy. The political system of the Roman Republic consisted of two consuls, the Senate and the Assembly. The Romans were involved in a series of wars with Carthage, a city on the north coast of Africa. The danger of Carthaginian occupation of Sicily led the Romans to attack Carthage. The wars that followed, known as the Punic Wars, lasted from 264 BC to 146 BC. The Carthaginians were defeated in this war. By the beginning of the 1st century BC, the Romans had conquered Greece and Asia Minor and established a protectorate over Egypt. Rivalry for power grew between two generals, Pompey and Julius Caesar. War between them followed and Pompey was murdered by his enemies in Egypt. Caesar remained in Egypt for some time, attracted by the captivating beauty of the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. On his return to Rome, in 46 BC, he made himself dictator. However, on the charge that Caesar intended to become king, he was assassinated in 44 BC, in a Senate meeting. 653. Lucent 92. After the assassination of Caesar, power passed into the hands of Mark Antony and Lepidus, Caesar's friends, and Octavian, Caesar's grandnephew. The leaders of the conspiracy, Brutus and Cassius, fled and organized a large army, but they were captured and slain. In 37 BC, Octavian became the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. He ruled for 44 years under the titles of Augustus, Hilsa called Imperator, himself meaning princeps, holy first victorious citizen of general the state. Up to period 284 following AD of his Roman called it worth the history peaceful principate. Beginning in his are with rule known and his rulethane period as Pax Romana, which means Roman peace. History. In 284 AD, Diocletian became the ruler. From this time on, Roman civilization declined more rapidly. One of Diocletian's successors, Constantine, built a new capital called Constantinople on the site of ancient Byzantium in 330 AD. Not long after, the Roman Empire was divided into two empires, Western and Eastern. The western part soon broke into many pieces. But the eastern part, called as Byzantine Empire, continued for 1,000 years more. The final blow came to the Roman Empire at the hands of northern invaders. They were German tribes. By 476 AD, the once powerful Roman Empire was no more. The Roman worshipped as many gods and goddesses as the Greeks. Jupiter sent rain for the crops, Mars helped them in war, Mercury carried their messages, Neptune, the god of sea, Vesta guarded the home, Juno protected their women. Contributions of Roman civilization. Roman law and principles of governance are Rome's greatest contribution to the world. F. So complete was Rome's system of road linking all parts of the empire that people could say all roads lead to Rome. The Romans developed their own alphabet, and the Latin language became the language of all educated people in Western Europe. Latin words are still widely used in science, and Latin is the basis of several European languages, especially French, Spanish, and Italian. Lucretius, Cicero, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca were the famous Roman philosophers. See Horace, Odes, and Virgil, Aeneid, were the famous Roman poets. Tacitus, Annals and Histories, was the most famous Roman historian, and Pliny, the Elder, was the another famous Roman historian. The Romans were the inventors of concrete and could firmly cement bricks and stones together. They also introduced two architectural improvements, the arch and cupolas or domes. Fights between gladiators or between a gladiator and a wild animal was a popular Roman amusement. Special arenas or amphitheaters were built for these contests. The ruins of the Colosseum, one of the greatest of arenas, can be seen in Rome. 653, Seven Wonders Hanging Garden of Babylon Pyramids of Egypt The Pharaoh of Alexandria Statue of Zeus at Olympia Colossus stands out of 1 Rhodes 912 Side of the Foot Harbor High Statue of Helios, the Sun God, Temple of Diana at Ephesus, Rome, Mausoleum of Mausolus, ruler of Halicarnassus, Medieval World, 500 AD 1500 AD. Medieval Europe. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, was a vast empire, and its capital Constantinople was the largest city of that time. The Byzantines built beautiful churches. The most famous of these is the Church of St. Sophia in Constantinople. This church was built during the reign of Byzantine Emperor Justinian in the 6th century AD. The Ottoman Turks conquered the Byzantine territories in 1453. Feudalism. The word feudal comes from the word feud, which originally meant a fief or land held on condition of service. In a feudal society, land was the source of power. Feudalism originated in the 8th and 9th centuries. First of all, the feudal system developed in Western Europe. The main division in feudal society was between feudal lords, who either got a share of the peasants' produce or had peasants to work on their lands without any payment, and peasants, who worked on the land. Feudal hierarchy. Feudal lords: A. Kings, B. Dukes and earls, C. Barons, D. Knights. Peasants: 3 categories of peasants: freeholders, villeins, and serfs. In the feudal hierarchy, the king stood at the top and the peasant stood at the bottom. The economic life under the feudal system was predominantly rural. The unit of land, which was like a village farm, was called manor. Crusades, 1095 AD, 1291 AD. Crusades means the military expeditions, under the banner of the cross, organized in Western Christendom primarily to recover the holy places of Palestine from Muslim occupation. 4 crusades were fought by the European Christians to liberate Jerusalem from Seljuk Turks, Muslims, who did not permit Christian pilgrims to enter the Holy Land. The Point Crusade, 1095-99, was launched after the provoking preachings of Pope Urban II. Note, the greatest leader of the church was called the Pope. The Pope means the Father. Jerusalem was captured and the Crusader states of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the country of Edessa, Antioch, and Tripoli were created. The fall of Edessa, 1144, inspired the unsuccessful Ilm Crusade, 1147-48. 654. World High. The capture of Jerusalem by Saladin in 1187 led to the inconclusive IIIRD Crusade, 1189-92, led by Philip II Augustus of France, Frederick I Barbarossa of Germany, and Richard I, the Lion Heart, of England. The IVTH Crusade, 1202-91, was diverted from its original objective, Egypt, and sacked Constantinople, 1204. This crusade failed to recover the lost ground in Acre. The last foothold of West in Palestine was lost in 1291. Arab civilization. In the 7th century, a new religion, Islam, arose in Arabia, which led to the establishment of a big empire. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, was born in Mecca in 570 AD. When he was 40, he had visions of truth and became a prophet. Muhammad's visions completely convinced him that Allah was the only God. He forbade the worship of idols and made many enemies. Ultimately, he had to leave Mecca and take refuge in Medina. This event took place in 622 AD and is known as the Year of Hijrah, or migration, and from it Muslims date their era, Hijra Samvat. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, is divided into a number of surahs or chapters and contains the teachings of Muhammad. Besides the Quran, the life of a Muslim is guided by the Sunnah, the practices of Muhammad, and the Hadiths, the sayings of the Muhammad. Muhammad was not only a religious leader but also a political leader. After his death, 632 AD, his successors were known as caliphs or caliphas who held both religious and political authority. Nearly all Arabia had accepted the new religion and become a unified state before the death of Prophet Muhammad in 632 AD. From Arabia, Islam spread very fast to many other parts of the world. Within 100 years, the caliphs and their generals had conquered Iran, Syria, Egypt, Central Asia, North Africa, and Spain. The Arab Empire was the largest that the world had seen so far. The first 3 caliphs ruled from the city of Medina. Then the capital was shifted to Kufa. Within 100 years, the caliphs and their generals had conquered Iran, Syria, Egypt, Central Asia, North Africa and Spain. The Arab Empire was the largest that the world had seen so far. The first 3 caliphs ruled from the city of Medina. Then the capital was shifted to Kufa. By 660 AD, when the Umayyad dynasty took over the reins of government, the principal city was Damascus. About 750 AD, the Umayyads were overthrown by the Abbasids, who made Baghdad their capital. Harun Rashid, famous in many legends, was an Abbasid ruler. The Abbasids ruled for about 300 years, till the Seljuk Turks took over Baghdad and ended the Arab rule. During the next 4 centuries, the Turks dominated the Islamic world. In the 15th century, most of these territories came under the dominance of the Ottoman Turks. It was the Ottoman Turks who took over Constantinople and ended the Eastern Roman Empire in 1453. Contributions of the Arab civilization. The coming establishment together of intellectual of a vast and empire scientific facilitated traditions that 656. 93 of various civilizations, particularly Greek, Iranian and Indian. The Arabs made all knowledge their own and developed it further. Al-Razi, an Arab scientist, discovered the true nature of smallpox, and Ibn Sina, Avicenna, discovered that tuberculosis is infectious. In mathematics, the Arabs learned the Indian numerals, Hindsa, and spread their use far and wide, so that in the West they are to this day called Arabic numerals. Some of the famous literary works of the Arab civilization are the Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam, Shahnameh by Ferdowsi, and the Arabian Nights, a collection of 1001 stories. The Arabs developed their own decorative designs. Their buildings had bulb-like domes, small minarets, horseshoe arches, and twisted columns. The Arabs also developed a decorative style of writing called calligraphy and made book illumination and art. Arab carpets, leatherwork, beautiful swords, silks, inlays, metalwork, and enameled. Glassware were prized everywhere. Medieval China. From the early 7th century, China was ruled by the Tang dynasty. The rule of Tang dynasty, 618 AD 906 AD, was followed by the Sung dynasty for about 300 years. After this, for about 100 years China was ruled by the Mongols. The rule of the Mongols in China was followed by that of Ming dynasty, which continued for about 300 years. In 1644, China was conquered by the Manchus, who continued to rule until 1911 AD. Contributions of medieval China. To prevent drain on the country's wealth, the Sung rulers started the use of paper money. Gunpowder was invented in China in the 10th century, about 400 years before the knowledge reached the Western world. The Chinese made iron chain suspension bridges as early as the 10th century. The Chinese devised the first method of printing in the 10th century. The importance of this invention for the spread of knowledge was as great as the invention of paper. Medieval Japan. Japan consists of hundreds of small islands, of which 4 in Shikoku are major islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Kyushu. By almost around the entire 7th century was AD. Unified into a single state in the 8th century. Edo, modern Kyoto, became the Japan capital in the 4 hands and over continued of 1000 in aristocratic years. To be the real family. Seat power of the, however, emperors ways off into being. Institution towards general the became shogun, while end of came the commander emperor. 12th century of the Japan's a new political. Ruled Japan, the remained shogun his army or and the at Edo, Kyoto. The at capital. 657, 94 Lucent's Jenner until 1867, the shoguns were the real rulers of Japan. Tokugawa Ieyasu was the founder of last shogun dynasty. In 1867, the last shogun of Tokugawa dynasty was overthrown and the power was restored to the emperor. Now Japan launched herself on the road to industrial development, modernization, and expansion. Samurai, or the warriors, were similar to the knights of Western Europe. The most unique contribution of medieval Japan to literature was a form of poetry called haiku. Haiku poems are short poems of only 17 syllables. The important contribution of medieval Japan to art was ikebana, or the art of flower arrangement, which is being imitated throughout the world. Buddhism reached Japan early in the 6th century from China through Korea, and during the course of centuries it became widespread. In certain periods it even eclipsed Shintoism, the old religion of Japan. Gradually, the Japanese developed their own distinct schools of Buddhism, the most famous of which is Zen Buddhism. The word Zen is derived from Dhyana. 7 Wonders of Medieval World: Colosseum of Rome, Great Wall of China, Porcelain Tower of Nanking. 4 Stonehenge of England, Mosque at St. Sophia, Constantinople, Catacombs of Alexandria, Leaning Tower of Pisa. Modern world, 1500 to 1945 AD. Renaissance. The 16th century is commonly designated as the Age of Renaissance, also called the Revival of Learning. It is said to have started with the capture of Constantinople, now Istanbul, by the Turks in 1453 and the dispersal of the scholars throughout Europe, who sought asylum in Italy. Italy practically became the home of the Renaissance, and fundamental to the Renaissance was the revival of classical learning, art and architecture, and the concept of the dignity of the man, which characterized humanism. It resulted in the emancipation of the mind of man from the shackles of effete dogmatism, in the creation of fresh intellectual atmosphere and ideals of life. The person, which is considered as the symbol of Renaissance, was Leonardo da Vinci of Italy. Great writers of the Italian Renaissance included Dante, Petrarch, Boccaccio, and Machiavelli. Great painters of Italian Renaissance included Leonardo da Vinci, famous paintings The Last Supper and Mona Lisa; Michelangelo, The Last Judgment and the Fall of Man; and Raphael, Madonna. Great astronomers of Italian Renaissance included Bruno and Galileo. The movement spread to other countries of Europe also, especially to France and Germany, and at last it reached the shores of England, where it manifested itself in the poems of Chaucer and Spenser, the plays of Shakespeare, Thomas More, the essays and particularly of Francis in Bacon, the courts and utopianism of such rulers as Elizabeth I of England. 658. Knowledge. The Renaissance movement was enormously, by the invention of the printing press, in 1454 Gutenberg of Germany, Gutenberg Bible 1456 the printed book, with the help of which olden books were multiplied leading to a great increased knowledge and in the spirit of inquiry and great literatures of Renaissance. Italian Dante, Divine Comedy, Petrarch, founder humanism and known as the father of Boccaccio, Decameron, Machiavelli, the Prince. English Chaucer, Canterbury Tales, Spenser, The Queen, Bacon, The Advancement of Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, The Merchant Venice, As You Like It, Julius Caesar, Macbeth, Thomas More, Utopia. French Rabelais, Pantagruel and Gargantua, Montaigne, Essays. Spanish Cervantes, Don Quixote. Portuguese cameos, The Lusiads. Dutch Erasmus, In Praise of Folly. German Thomas Kempis, The Imitation of Christ. Reformation. The Reformation was another movement that the 16th century witnessed. It was started by Martin Luther in Wittenberg, Germany, in 1517 by publicly protesting against the sale of letters of indulgence. Indulgence, the letters which remitted punishments of the sinners who bought them and which began to be considered as passports to heaven. It was a revolt against the control of conscience by the priests. Thanks to the inborn spirit of revolt against the Catholic Church, Henry VIII of England could take the bold step of breaking away from the papacy, i.e., authority of the Pope on the issue of his first divorce in 1534. Henry VIII declared himself the head of the Church when the Pope would not give him permission to divorce his wife, Catherine. With the breaking away from the Roman Catholic Church by such leaders as Luther of Germany and Calvin of Switzerland, Western Europe was split between Catholic and Protestant countries, a situation which developed enmities of the fiercest nature. The movement, which began within the Catholic Church to combat the effects of the Protestant Reformation, was known as Counter-Reformation movement. Geographical discoveries, discovery year, discover, nationality, sponsored by Cape of Good Hope 1487 Bartholomew Diaz, Portugal. Portuguese. America 1492 Christopher Columbus, Spain, Gino, Italian, Newfoundland 1497 John Cabot, Italian, England Sea route of India via 1498 Vasco da Gama, Portuguese, Portugal Cape of Good Hope Brazil 1500 Pedro Alvarez Cabral Portugal, Portuguese, Strait of Magellan 1520 Magellan, Portuguese, Spain 659, World Discovery Year, discover, nationality, sponsored island off Tasmania 1642 Tasman, Dutch, by a New Zealand Holland Sandwich Island / 1770 Captain James Cook, British. England Hawaiian Island North Pole 1909 Robert Peary, American, USA South Pole 1911 Amundsen, Norwegian, Norway The Great Development Europe which marked the beginning of discoveries. Modern age in was a series of geographical helped compass by Anselm Astrolabe, remarkable daring inventions sailors sailed viz. Thedo distant lands. They were financed by rulers and merchants. Lure the main of profits motivation that trade behind with these the East adventures would bring was the during 1288 to 93, Marco Polo, 1256 to 1326, Venetian traveler, traveled from Venice to China and Japan. He was the first European to visit China. From his travelogue, the Europeans learned about the all-round prosperity of the East. The first great steps in the exploration of the earth were taken by the sailors under the patronage of the Portuguese and Spanish rulers. Prince Henry, 1394 to 1460, the navigator of Portugal, encouraged sailors by making maps based on trips to the African coast. In 1487, Bartholomew Diaz reached the point which the Portuguese named Cape of Good Hope, the southernmost point of Africa. Vasco da Gama followed this route and sailed on round the Cape and reached Calicut in India in 1498. Italian sailor Columbus' trip was financed by Spain, from where he sailed in 1492. When he had reached land, he thought he had reached India, so he called the islands the Indies, but it was America. The land discovered by Columbus was soon to be called the Americas after the name of a later Italian explorer, Amerigo Vespucci. Imperialism by colonialism, colonies, migrants, and from keeping the colony another policy incorporating the means of country. Extending dependent the country such thus, a states is colonized the called or policy territory rule colonialism. Over territories of having settled other territories, and of into had an empire stopped Portuguese is called Columbus. Imperialism. Sailor, he went sailed beyond around to the land's tip of Magellan, a South Islands Magellan of the that Magellan. Pacific America, were reached because he which called died. What it seemed is the Magellan is named new now quieter ocean called after was than him the he first Philippine Atlantic. Entered, to straight sail round the world. Other sent out countries England, their ships to join the France race and the for Holland also world explorations, in 1577. Francis Drake of England sailed round these complete voyages geographical laid the knowledge foundations of the fur world, the almost 659-95 Glorious Revolution, 1688, England James II was a Roman Catholic. His tactless attempt to secure freedom of worship for the Catholics united the Whigs and the Tories of the Anglican Church against him. People tolerated the rule of James II because they thought that he would be succeeded by his daughter Mary, who was a Protestant. But a son was born to James II. The knowledge that James' policies might be continued by a son to be brought up as a Catholic turned against him many Tories, hitherto loyal to him. So a few leading men Whigs as well as Tories dispatched an invitation to William of Orange, ruler of Holland, to succeed to the English throne and save England from Catholic tyranny. William accepted the invitation and came to England for his purpose. James II, throwing the Great Seal into the Thames, fled to France. This event is known as an England Glorious or Bloodless Revolution. Effects: 1. The despotic rule of the Stuarts ended, the supremacy of Parliament was established. 2. The system of requiring estimate and accounts for supplies and of specific appropriations, which is the nucleus of modern budgetary system, now became fixed. 3. The Bill of Right, 1689, it settled the problem of succession, italicied the provision that no Roman Catholic can wear the crown. As William III and his wife Mary II, daughter of James II and a Protestant by faith, the joint monarchs accepted the Bill of Rights. Magna Carta, or the Great Charter, 1215, it was the Charter of Liberties which King John II of England was forced to sign in 1215 at Runnymede. It meant to put a check upon the arbitrary powers of the king. The most important principle that it laid down was that an English man should be governed by definite laws and not by the whims or the will of a despotic ruler. Magna Carta was said to be the foundation stone of rights and liberties of the English people. Habeas Corpus Act, 1679. This act during the reign of Charles II of England provided that no one was to be imprisoned without a right or warrant stating the charge against him. It also gave facilities to a prisoner for obtaining either speedy trial or release on bail. The act safeguarded the personal liberties of the people against arbitrary imprisonment by king's orders. Industrial Revolution. The process of change that transformed Britain first and then other countries from agricultural to industrial economies. The Industrial Revolution began about 1750 when the agricultural revolution was well underway. Inventions. Wermadainth textile industry by such men as James Maid and Hargreaves, water amund the frame, production, spinning cartwright 1769, of Samuel Jenny, cloth, power 1764, much Crompton loom, Richard Faster, mule, and 1785, archive which 1779, yarn. Produced at these first new near of machines rivers better for quality. Invented required water power, by factories James into then, what house when in them, 1769, the steam engine was. England, a near manufacturing coalfields. An agricultural country. Were of communication country available production was it now followed. Turned increased into the cheaper rates. Manifold. Things improved methods. 7 o'clock. 96 Lucent's Jenner. The economic progress and industrialization of England influenced the social and cultural life of the people. It had far-reaching effects on the political history of England. By 1850 the Industrial Revolution had penetrated into Belgium, France, Germany, Switzerland, and USA. By 1900 it had extended to Sweden, Italy, Russia, Japan, and Argentina. Presently it is penetrating into China, India, and Africa. Capitalism, economic system in which a country's trade and industry are organized and controlled by the owners of capital, the chief elements being competition, profit, supply, and demand. American Revolution or American War of Independence, 1775 to 83. The American Revolution is the name given to the struggle by which the 13 colonies of England in North America declared their independence from England and fought a war to make it a reality. By the middle of the 18th century, differences in thought and interests had developed between the colonies on the one hand and the mother country, England, on the other. Attempts to collect new taxes such as the Stamps Act, 1765, and tax on tea, 1767, angered the colonists who maintained that the British government was imposing taxation without representation and that only the colonial representative assemblies could rightfully tax the Americans. Boston Tea Party, 1773, the tax on tea led to trouble. In 1773, several colonies refused to unload the tea coming in English ships. In Boston, when the governor ordered a ship to be unloaded, a group of citizens dressed as American Indians boarded the ship and dumped the crates of tea into water. This incident is known as the Boston Tea Party. The American Revolution started in 1775 and lasted until 1781. On issued July its author was 1776, the Declaration Thomas Jefferson. Of independence the declaration was stated natural of that and all inalienable men are created right to equal life, liberty that they in pursueth avia. When the American happiness, colonies these revolution rights and one are that the violated made they war possible are by against justified any the government, England. Establishment in revolting the in of a 1783 New England nation, the acknowledged United of States of America independ, USA. Was Deng elected in the treaty first President Paris and of USA, George Washington. French Revolution, 1789-93. Not the it gave only French to of humanity France Revolution and Europe knew was ideas of but great of mankind liberty, event in the is equality a history whole, and fraternity. The French Revolution is the nemegaventode struggle which swept away the old regime in France and brought about fundamental changes in the socio-political setup. 701. This political upheaval began in 1789. King Louis XIV and his successors had brought divine right absolutism to the peak. The French king, in the 18th century, had unlimited powers. Opponents were put in prison without trial. The French society consisted of three estates or classes, the first, clergy, and the second, nobility. Estates were privileged in many ways. Members of the third estate ___ commoners, middle class, workers and peasants, were the underdogs. They made 90% of the population. Almost the entire tax burden fell on the third estate. But the privileged classes were exempted from these taxes. These undemocratic features of French society were sharply criticized by able writers and thinkers like Montesquieu, 1689-1775, Voltaire, 1694-1778, and Rousseau, 1712-1778. The immediate cause of the French Revolution was the bankrupt condition of the French treasury, brought about in part by the extravagant expenditure and inefficiency of Louis XV and Louis XVI. The French Revolution started with the fall of Bastille Fort. The mobs in Paris attacked the Bastille on July 14, 1789, killed its governor and freed the prisoners. This ancient fortress, where political prisoners were kept, was the symbol of tyranny in France. Its capture aroused the whole nation. Peasants in the provinces plundered and burnt several castles. Liberty, equality, and fraternity became the watchword. Government in France broke down, as royal officials fled and the people stopped paying taxes. The National Assembly governed France from 1789 to 1791. It drafted a constitution which created a limited monarchy. Its preamble was the famous Declaration of the Rights of Man. All feudal rights were abolished. Local government was reorganized. The old provinces were replaced by 83 departments. Church lands were confiscated and sold to peasants. Special church privileges were abolished. The First Republic was proclaimed on September 21, 1792. King Louis XVI and his Queen Marie Antoinette were beheaded on the guillotine on January 21, 1793 and October 16, 1793 respectively on charges of treason. Napoleon, after some time, emerged as the strong man of France. The French Revolution was an event of fundamental importance not only for France but for the whole of Europe and ultimately for the whole world. In France, the revolution established the political supremacy of the middle class in the towns and transferred the bulk of landed property to the peasantry in the countryside. For Europe and the world, it represented an ideal of popular sovereignty and equality before the law. Unification of Italy, 1848-70. One of the major features of the history of Europe in the 19th century was struggle for national unification and independence. Italy and Germany were the two important nations which emerged as united, independent states in the 19th century. In the early 19th century, Italy was divided into number of states in which the Kingdom of Sardinia was the most powerful. 702 was the struggle organized for by Italian, the two independence famous revolutionaries in Mazzini and Garibaldi. The movement known as the Young Italy movement. Led by the minister after under the of revolution leadership Sardinia, of took of 1848, Sardinia. The Count initiative Cavour, of uniting the Bin Sardinia by the united year took in 1861, the then title the of entire Victor King states. Emmanuel of Italy, except two, the Rome, king. Rome was still outside the Kingdom of Italy, ruled by the Pope. Italian soldiers liberated the city Rome in 1870, and in 1871, Rome became the capital United Italy. Unification of Germany, 1848-71. Like Italy, Germany was also divided into a number of states. At the end of the Napoleonic Wars, 1792-1815, there were 38 independent states in Germany in which Prussia was the most powerful. In 1815, the German states along with Austria were organized into a Germanic confederation. In 1848, revolts occurred in every German state and the rulers were forced to grant democratic constitutions. To unite Germany and to frame a constitution for the united Germany, a constituent assembly met in Frankfurt. The Frankfurt Assembly proposed the unification of Germany as a constitutional monarchy under the King of Prussia, who would become the Emperor of Germany. However, the King of Prussia declined the offer. Repression soon followed. With the failure of the Revolution of 1848 to unify Germany, one phase in the struggle for unification came to an end. Now Germany was to be unified not into a democratic ruler's country, into by militaristic the efforts empire. Of revolutionaries the leader of, but this by policy that was Bismarck, who belonged to a Prussian aristocratic family. He wanted to achieve the unification of Germany under the leadership of the Prussian of Unification Monarchy. As one of Bismarck and described iron. His policy of blood and iron meant a blood he policy defeated of war Austria and Old was dissolved confederation, separated the from Germanic Uniter Confederation. Thus 22 German states of Germany in place into of North German Confederation the unification France of Germany which of Prussia in 1866. War enabled Bonaparte-Bismarck war was 1870 was defeated completed in the and the remaining thus captured. A French result this Emperor Louis to absorb German state soil into title it of United took it German which placed Germany. William was the in France king of on Prussia, though the formal German took ceremony the at Emperor Versailles I not held in the palace of the French kings. After unification, Germany emerged as a very strong power in Europe. 703 First World War, July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918. Causes. The causes of First World War are as under 1. Militarism. This means the dangerous and burdensome mechanism of great standing armies and large navies along with an espionage system. Narrow nationalism or competitive patriotism. The love of one's country demanded the hatred of the other. Love of Germany demanded the hatred of France and vice versa. Economic imperialism. It led to international rivalries. Every country tried to capture markets in every nook and corner of the world. This led to bitterness and heartburning. Anglo-German rivalry and the Charter of William II. Anglo-German rivalry proved to be the main cause of World War I. Germany had become a great industrial country and wanted to have more markets for trade. Germany was jealous of the colonial and naval greatness of England. William II, Emperor of Germany, was very ambitious and wanted to gain influence in Turkey by linking Berlin with Baghdad by a railway line. This gave rise to a great rivalry between England and Germany. William II was arrogant, haughty, and ambitious. He wanted Germany to be the strongest power in the world. He believed in the policy of world power or downfall. Lack of international organization. There was lack of an international organization to control international relations. Immediate cause. The immediate cause of the war was the murder of Archduke Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austrian throne. He and his wife Sophie were killed at Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, an annexed territory of Austria, by a Serbian. The Austrians held government of Serbia responsible for the murder and ultimately attacked Serbia. There was a strong rivalry already between Austria-Hungary and Serbia in the Balkans. World War I, Central Powers versus Allied Powers. Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Turkey, entered November 1914, Bulgaria, entered October 1915, etc. The Allies are Entente Powers, Great Britain/England/United Kingdom, UK, France, Serbia, Belgium, Japan, Russia/USSR, left December 1917, Italy, entered in April 26, 1915, Romania, entered August 1916, USA, entered April 6, 1917, etc. Course of war. To begin with, Austria was in favor of local war, but as time passed, the situation became more grave. Other countries jumped into the fray. Germany were the Austria-Hungary, Allied called powers. Central the Turkey the powers. War allied Japan started and Bulgaria on powers and the on other Russia, July were joined 28, side on they 1914 by war 1 were inside England in ended called 1915 they France, Serbia, Belgium, Italy and USA in 1917. Were on November completely 11, settlement 1918 not signed on, 1919 to 20, November defeated the Allied the countries central powers were in powers be not Anna. Peace was defeated the by 11, 1918, followed armistice at Paris. Though the number represented peace conference at the peace conference. 705, 98 Lucent's gene. Of countries represented at the peace conference was 27. The terms of the peace treaties were really decided by three countries: USA, Britain, and France. The three persons who played the determining role in framing the terms of the treaties were Woodrow Wilson, President of USA, Lloyd George, Prime Minister of Britain, and George Clemenceau, Prime Minister of France. After prolonged discussion, the Treaty of Versailles, a city of France, was signed between the Allies and Germany on June 28, 1919. This treaty rearranged the boundaries of Europe, and many new states, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Estonia, Lithuania, etc. were formed. William II, the German emperor, abdicated and took asylum in the Netherlands, Holland. The treaty also contained provisions for disarming Germany. The strength of her army was to be limited to 100,000 troops. Germany was to pay 650,000 as war reparations for damage done to the Allies during the war. The Treaty of Versailles was followed by the Treaty of Saint-Germain, 1919, the Treaty of Neuilly, 1919, the Treaty of Trianon, 1920, and the Treaty of Sevres, 1920. Woodrow Wilson's 14 points. In an address to the Congress in Jan. 1918, American President Woodrow Wilson outlined the basis of a peace settlement. His famous 14 points for lasting peace in the world are: 1. There was to be no more secret diplomacy. 2. Freedom off the seas. 3. Removal of economic barriers of international trade. 4. Reduction of armaments. 5. Impartial adjustment of all colonial claims on the basis of the interests of the subject population. 6. National self-determination. 7. Establishment of a League of Nations for the purpose of affording mutual guarantees of political independence and territorial integrity of great and small states alike. The remaining points dealt with the formation of new boundaries and new states on the basis of nationality and demanded that Germany must evacuate all lands she had forcibly occupied. The peace settlement of 1919-20 has been severely criticized. The terms of the Treaty of Versailles were harsh and humiliating for Germany. The peace settlement was based on the principle, to the victors belong the spoils and allies are the victors. Meanwhile, the many suggestions were made from time to time for the creation of an international organization which could check wars in the future. At the instance of Woodrow Wilson, the President of America, the League of Nations officially came into existence of January 10, 1920. Its headquarters was fixed at Geneva in Switzerland. Russian Revolution, 1917. The Russian Revolution of 1917 was one of the most significant events of 20th century. It established the ideology of Marxism. It was a great revolution after the French Revolution and was not limited to Russia but affected several countries of the world. March the establishment by the Great Second Basic First Bolsheviks 1917 revolution stage causes with stage of the in under the overthrow the November. Russia world's Russian Revolution Lenin of the took of first revolution same the place the were communist czar year czar in deep seated Nicholas II led began with stages. To state that the two in the source the government of all authority was and autocratic. Inefficient his powers bureaucracy were vigorously the exercised general standard by corrupt of living and of freedom. The people all Russians was tragically were low. Forced there to support was little the social Orthodox Church. 705. Knowledge. The immediate cause of the event was however the suffering and confusion caused by Russia's disastrous defeats during World War I. Her armies lacked arms and ammunition. Prices soared high and the economy was in shambles. Russian, February Revolution began according with March to Old Revolution Russian. Calendar. Disorder the Russian broke capital, out in March Petrograd 1917. Now Tsar Leningrad, Nicholas II was forced to abdicate. He and his family were later killed by the revolutionaries. Democratic the provisional successive elements government premiership, Mensheviks composed of Prince Group, of liberal Waffen Then Alexander Kerensky lost ground to the radical wing, Bolsheviks group, of the Social Democratic Labor Party. Political and economic theory that land, transport, the chief industries, natural resources e.g. coal, water, power etc., should be owned and managed by the state and wealth equally distributed. In 1848, Karl Marx and Engels laid down the principles of scientific socialism in Communist Manifesto and Marxism became the theoretical basis for most socialist thought. Socialism was split in Russia between the reformist Mensheviks and revolutionary Bolsheviks that led to the term socialism and communism as they are now generally understood. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, seized power in Petrograd on November 7, 1917 November Revolution, October Revolution, according to the old Russian calendar. The Kerensky government was overthrown and authority was vested in a council of commissars, ministers, with Lenin as premier. The new government immediately decreed the abolition of private land ownership and set up a dictatorship of the proletariat actually of the Communist Party, as the Bolsheviks came to called. The Bolsheviks extended their authority over a large part of European Russia, but elsewhere they faced the resistance of the anti-Bolshevik parties. The resulting civil war lasted till 1920 and was complicated by foreign intervention. The communists were ultimately in undisputed control of the country. In the period between 1917 and 1920, the communists took drastic action against internal enemies, or counter-revolutionaries, as they were called. Former landlords, capitalists, czarist officers, etc. were arrested, exiled, or executed. The Tsar and his family were killed. In 1923, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, came into being. Its constitution declared the establishment of a republic of workers and peasants. Ownership of the means of production, including land, factories, mines, banks and railroads, was vested in the state. The state, which is known officially as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, also commonly Lenin referred died to in as 1924 the Soviet and was Russia succeeded or just be Russia, Stalin, 1924-53. Note, in 1991, Communist Party rule in Soviet Union collapsed following the failure of an anti-Gorbachev coup by communist hardliners. The constituent republics asserted their independence and the 706. HAL. Former responsibility was Soviet Independent 1991. Formed in Union Soviet the bi-state same for republics was Russia, economic, CIS, officially month Ukraine joined A and looser the dissolved military and later. Commonwealth Belarus. Organization now cooperation in 9 CIS December other with us, 25 OFA. Community of 12 independent states. 3 former Soviet republics, Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania are fully independent states. It is notable that Soviet Union was a federal state consisting of 15 separate republics. Chinese Revolution. 1911, Republican Revolution, 1949, Communist Revolution. In October 1911, a revolution under the leadership of Sun Yat-sen ousted the Manchu or Qing dynasty and a republic was set up. However, the first president Sun Yat-sen resigned in 1912, in favor of strongman Yuan Shikai, 1912-16. The period 1916 to 18, known as the warlord era, was one of great chaos, as a number of generals seized control of different provinces. A party known as the Kuomintang, KMT, or nationalists, formed by Sun Yat-sen in 1912, was trying to govern China and control the generals who were busy fighting each other. The KMT leaders were Sun Yat-sen and after his death in 1925, General Chiang Kai-shek. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, was founded in 1921, and at first it cooperated with the KMT in its struggle against the warlords. As the KMT gradually established control over more and more of China, it felt strong enough to do without the help of the communists, and it tried to destroy them. The communists, under their leader Mao Zedong, reacted vigorously, and after escaping from surrounding KMT forces, embarked on the 6,000-mile-long march, October 1934 to October 1935, to form a new power base in northern China. Civil war dragged on, complicated by Japanese interference which culminated in a full-scale invasion in 1937. When the Second World War ended with defeat for Japan and their withdrawal from China, the KMT and the CCP continued to fight it out. Chiang it was Mao Kai-shek Zedong had and helped from communists the USA, but who in finally 1949 triumphed. Chiang Kai-shek and his supporters fled to the island of Taiwan, Formosa. Mao held Zedong of China quickly and he remained control leader until over his death in 1976. Turkish Revolution, 1923 Turkey was called Sickman of Europe. The 19th disintegration century and was of the completed Ottoman after Empire Turkeys began defeating in the First World War. The Allies wanted to establish their domination over Turkey itself and to give away parts of Turkey to Greece and Italy. 707-99 The treatment meted out to Turkey by the Allies had led to a mass upsurge in India directed against Britain. This upsurge is known as the Khilafat movement. The nationalist movement in Turkey was organized to prevent the domination of the country by the Allied powers and the annexation of parts of Turkey agreed to the terms dictated by the Allied powers. However, even before the treaty was signed by the Sultan, a national government had been established under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Pasha with its headquarters in Ankara. Following the treaty with the Sultan, Turkey had been invaded by Greece. The Turks under Kemal's leadership were able to repel the invasion and the Allies were forced to repudiate the earlier treaty. The Allied troops were withdrawn from Turkish territory and the areas which were to be annexed by European countries remained in Turkey. Thus, Turkey was able to win her complete independence. The success of the Turks in winning the complete independence of their country was followed by a program to modernize Turkey and to end the influence of backward-looking feudal elements. Turkey was proclaimed a republic on October 29, 1923 and Kemal became the first president of Turkey. He ruled the new republic for 15 years, 1923 to 38. The Turkish Sultan had carried the title of Caliph, Khalifa. The new government abolished the institution of Caliph, Khalifa, in 1924. Education was taken out of the hands of the religious leaders. Religion was separated from the state. Mustafa Kemal Pasha is known as the founder of modern Turkey and Ataturk, the father of the Turks. Economic depression of the world, 1929 to 34. In economic terms, a decline in trade and general prosperity is called depression. The Great Depression of 1929 to 34 was worldwide, starting with an agricultural recession followed by financial panic and collapse, known as the Wall Street crash, October 1929, in the USA. The effects on the USA were catastrophic. By 1933, almost 14 million people were out of work and American President Hoover's efforts failed to make any impression on the crisis. Nobody was surprised when the Republicans lost the presidential election of NOV, 1932. The new Democrat president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, introduced policies known as the New Deal to try and put the country on the road to recovery. The Great Depression in turn affected financial institutions and money markets in other parts of the world and caused a run on the pound in the UK. The result was a decline in internal consumption and exports in industrialized countries, factory closures, and massive unemployment. Fascism in Italy. The unification of Italy was only completed in 1870, however, the new state suffered from economic and political weaknesses. 708. 100 Lucent's gene. The First World War, 1914 to 18, was a great strain on her economy, and there was bitter disappointment at her treatment by the Versailles settlement. Between 1919 and 1922, there were 5 different governments, all of which were incapable of taking the decisive action that the situation demanded. In 1919, Benito Mussolini founded the Italian Fascist Party, which won 35 seats in the 1921 elections. At the same time, there seemed to be a real danger of a left-wing revolution. In an atmosphere of strikes and riots, the fascists staged a march on Rome which culminated in King Victor Emmanuel inviting Mussolini to form a government. October 1922, he remained in power until July 1943. Gradually, Mussolini took on the powers of a dictator and attempted to control the entire way of life of the Italian people. Fascism. The ideology and political system of Benito Mussolini, which encouraged militarism and extreme nationalism, organizing Italy along right-wing hierarchical authoritarian lines fundamentally opposed to democracy and liberalism. The term is also applied to any ideology or movement inspired by such principles, e.g., German National Socialism. At first it seemed as though his authoritarian regime might bring lasting benefits to Italy, and he won popularity with his adventurous and successful foreign policy. Later, he made the fatal mistake of entering the Second World War on the side of Germany, June 1940, even though he knew Italy could not afford involvement in another war. After the Italians suffered defeats by the British, who captured her African possessions and occupied Sicily, they turned against Mussolini. He was deposed and arrested, July 1943, but was rescued by the German, Sep. 1943, and set up as ruler in northern Italy, backed by German troops. In April 1945, as British and American troops advanced northwards through Italy towards Milan, Mussolini tried to escape to Switzerland but was captured and shot dead by his Italian enemies, known as partisans. Nazism in Germany. As Germany moved towards defeat in 1918, public opinion turned against the government, and in October, the Kaiser, in a desperate bid to hang on to power, appointed Prince Max as chancellor. He was known to be in favor of more democratic form of government in which parliament had more power. But it was too late. In November, revolution broke out. The Kaiser escaped to Holland and abdicated, and Prince Max resigned. Friedrich Ebert, leader of the left-wing Social Democrat Party, became head of the government. In Jan. 1919, a general election was held, the first complete democratic one ever to take place in Germany. The Social Democrats emerged as the largest single party, and Ebert became the first president of the republic. They had some Marxist ideas, but believed that the way to achieve socialism was through parliamentary democracy. 709. The new government was by no means popular with all Germans. Even before the elections, the communists had attempted to seize power in the Spartacist Rising, Jan. 1919. In 1920, right-wing enemies of the Republic occupied Berlin, the Kapp Putsch. The government managed to survive these threats and several later ones, including Hitler's Munich Beer Hall Putsch, 1923. By the end of 1919, a new constitution had been agreed upon by the National Assembly, Parliament, which was meeting at Weimar because Berlin was still torn by political unrest. This Weimar constitution gave its name to the Weimar Republic and lasted until 1933, when it was destroyed by Hitler. The Great Depression, beginning with the Wall Street crash in October 1929, had disastrous effects on Germany, producing massive unemployment with 6.5 million unemployed. The government was unable to cope with the situation, and by the end of 1932 the Weimar Republic seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, Adolf Hitler and his National Socialists, Nazis, had been carrying out a great propaganda campaign blaming the government for all the ills of Germany, and setting out Nazi solutions to the problems. In Jan. 1933, President Hindenburg appointed Hitler as chancellor, and soon afterwards Hitler saw to it that democracy ceased to exist, the Weimar Republic was at an end, and from then on until April 1945, Hitler was the dictator of Germany. Only defeat in the Second World War and the death of Hitler, April 30, 1945, freed the German people from the Nazi tyranny. Adolf Hitler appointed Rudolf Hess as deputy Führer of Nazi Party in 1933. Hess delivered a speech on the occasion of the first anniversary of the proclamation of the party progress on February 25, 1934, which was broadcast to the nation. In his speech, The Oath to Adolf Hitler, he said Adolf Hitler is Germany and Germany is Adolf Hitler. He who pledges himself to Hitler pledges himself to Germany. Militarism in Japan. During the 20 years after Mussolini's March on Rome, 1922, many other countries, faced with severe economic problems, followed the examples of Italy and Germany and turned to fascism or right-wing nationalism. The army in the early 1930s fell under the influence of the army in the early 1930s. The military soon involved Japan in war with China, and later took the country into the Second World War with its attack on Pearl Harbor, 1941. After a brilliant start, the Japanese eventually defeat and devastation when the two atomic were dropped. After the Second World War, Japan to democracy and made a remarkable recovery, soon becoming one of the world's most powerful economically. 710. Second causes, World. The causes war, September 1, 1939, September 2, 1945. World H of Second World. Had Germany the entreaty itself of the Versailles germs of 1919, the second, the treaty war world are of as war. Versailles under the treaty it was the very point badly of a bayonet, treated. Siena was spirit forced of revenge. Tosign with to tear Mussolini away the of treaty Italy. Of Versailles, Hitler joined hands. Nationalist to the national fire. Movements. Although movement Hitler in of Germany tried to end and assure Italy, added to the rise world fuel off. Ultimately, for Mussolini that long. He meant he led embarked peace, to had war. He established on could the a career same not conceal of was aggression the his case ambition which with Italy in 1922. Who his dictatorship in conflict countries of like ideology Germany, between Italy dictatorship and Japan represented and democracy, the ideology of dictatorship while Great Britain, France and USA represented the ideology of democracy. Mussolini described the conflict between the two ideologies thus, the struggle between the two worlds can permit no compromise either where the Inefficiency of League of Nations. Unfortunately, when hostility was growing between the two camps, there was no effective international organization which could bring the leaders of the two camps on a common platform and bring about a reconciliation between them. The League of Nations was practically dead. Colonial and commercial rivalry. The colonial and commercial rivalry between England and France on one side, and Germany and Italy on the other brought them into conflict with each other. Aggressiveness of Berlin-Rome-Tokyo axis. Hitler had become very aggressive. He annexed the Saar Valley, occupied Rhineland and Austria, captured Czechoslovakia, etc. Mussolini attacked Abyssinia, Ethiopia, Japan attacked China. This aggressive mood of the fascist powers got its fullest expression when they formed an axis providing for mutual aid in the international sphere. The immediate refuse of cause Poland, the to immediate surrender. Of establishing, cause, I, Germany surrender of the war gave of Waslingthian. A. Port between so ultimatum corridor. Germany of Danzig, Germany these two invaded Poland too, and the demands regarding Poland East Right Prussia were on September rejected through 1939. By the rail Poland. Britain Polish. And Poland, France declared as they were September. Course of war, on one side. Japan, the other called were the Great Axis war powers against under, or were Germany Central Treaty Germany, obligations powers, 1, on China Italy 3, and to 1939. And 8. On. Britain, France, USSR, USA. Germany had called and focused successors after Astboy, Himmler Theagenstweist, Tofal surrender, Allied drop surrendered, committed Japan. Of Germany powers to face on and on the suicide August defeat unconditionally, or when USA City Allies, .6, once in 1945, she of April Hiroshima. Again. UK refused in 30, concentrated atom on Hitler, 1945, another May bomb, Japan Goebbels in 7, little atom 1945 there was. 712. 101. Bomb, the Fat Man, was dropped on August 9, 1945, on the city of Nagasaki. It is estimated that more than 1 lakh persons were killed and leaving thousands more slowly dying of radiation poisoning. On August 14, 1945, Japan conveyed its acceptance of the Allied demand to surrender, but the actual surrender took place on September 2, 1945. With the Japanese surrender, the Second World War came to an end. Effects of WW2. 1. After about 15 months of preparatory work, the peace treaties were given a final shape by the 21 participating countries and they were signed on February 10, 1947, in Paris by the representatives of the 5 enemy states and the Allied powers. As regards Germany, she was occupied by the Big Four. After its fall in May 1945, it was divided into 4 zones, each of which was administered separately beyond the occupying powers. Berlin came under joint occupation. Ultimately, out of one Germany came 2 countries, West Germany and East Germany. Italy was also deprived of her colonies. As regards Japan, a peace treaty was signed with her at San Francisco in 1951. 2. The United Nations Organization, UNO, was established in October 24, 1945. 3. The USA and USSR emerged as the 2 most powerful nations in the world. 4. The emergence of Russia, USSR, gave rise to the desire for freedom in colonies which were under European control in Asia. 5. The British Empire thus rapidly lost its leadership as more and more of its colonies won independence. 6. France also lost much of their past glory. 7. Nearly all the East European countries embraced communism and communist rule was established in the Chinese mainland also. WW2, Axis versus Allies. The Axis powers or Central Powers, Germany, Italy, entered June 1940, Japan, entered December 1941, etc. The Allies or Entente powers, Great Britain, France, USSR, entered June 1941, USA, entered December 8, 1941, China, entered December 1941, etc. Important Axis leaders of WW2, Adolf Hitler, Nazi dictator of Germany, Benito Mussolini, Prime Minister of Italy, and Hirohito, Emperor of Japan, and his Prime Ministers Heidi Tojo and Fumimaro Kono. Important Allied leaders of WW2, Franklin D. Roosevelt up to April 12, 1945 and Harry Truman after April 12, 1945, Presidents of USA, Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Britain, Joseph Stalin, Premier of USSR, Paul Reynaud and Charles de Gaulle, Prime Ministers of France, and Chiang Kai-shek, head of the Nationalist Government of China. Miscellaneous important dates: L. Ancient B.C. 776 First Olympiad in Greece. 753 Rome founded. 490 Battle of Marathon, the Greeks defeated the Iranians/Persians. 327-26 Invasion of India by Alexander, Battle of Hydaspes. 221 Qin Hung Ti Universal Emperor in China, Great Wall of China completed. Invasion off Britain by Julius Caesar, the great Roman general. 44 Assassination of Julius Caesar by Brutus for birth of Jesus Christ 713, 102 Lucent's General A.D. 29 Crucifixion of Jesus Christ. 43 Roman conquest of Britain. Medieval 570 Birth of Prophet Muhammad at Mecca. 622 Beginning migration of Hijra Muhammad era, Muhammadan from Mecca calendar, to Medina on, Hijra, July 15. 800 Charlemagne crowned Roman emperor at St. Peter's. 871 Accession of Alfred the Great to the throne of Britain. 901 Death of King Alfred the Great, 1066 Battle of Hastings, Norman invasion of England. William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, defeated the English King Harold IL at Hastings. 1215 Magna Carta, or the Great Charter, signed by King John II at Runnymede in England on June 15. 1280 Gunpowder, invented by Roger Bacon. 1338 The 100 Years' War broke out. It lasted up to 1453. 1431 Joan of Arc, a brave French peasant girl, obtained victory over the English at Orleans. She was burnt alive at the stakes. 1443 The Black Death, i.e. plague, broke out in England. 1453 The capture of Constantinople, the home of classical learning, by the Ottoman Turks compelled the Greek scholars to flee to Italy and other West European countries, where they spread the knowledge of Greek philosophy and literature. This was the beginning of Renaissance in Europe. 1486 Bartholomew Diaz rounded the Cape of Good Hope. 1492 Columbus sailed on his first expedition to the West Indies, which later led to the discovery of America, the New World. 1498 Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese, discovered the sea route to India via the Cape of Good Hope. Modern 1517 Beginning of Reformation. 1529 to 36 Reformation in England under Henry VIII. 1564 Birth of Shakespeare. 1571 Battle of Lepanto, Turks defeated by the Christian League. 1577 Drake, the famous English admiral, started his voyage round the world for the first time and plundered Spanish ships and ports in South America. 1588 Admiral Drake defeated the Spanish Armada. England became the mistress of the seas. 1600 Establishment of the British East India Company in India. December 31st. 1605 Gunpowder plot in England to blow up the English Parliament. 1616 Shakespeare passes away. Trial and execution of Charles I, beginning of Commonwealth. 1649 to 60 The Commonwealth and the Protectorate in England. 1660 Restoration of monarchy in England. 1665 The Great Plague in London. 1679 Habeas Corpus Act. 1688 Rule establishment that the divine glorious of the Stuarts' rights or of bloodless parliamentary ended, of kings and revolution the supremacy parliamentary in England. And abolition rule despotic began. Of 1704 Battle of Blenheim, Marlborough and Eugene inflicted a crushing defeat on the French army. 1707 Union of England and Scotland. 1763 Treaty of Paris, it ended the 7 Years' War. 1756-63, weakened France, made England a great colonial power. 714, Knowledge 1776 Declaration Republic of American of 13 States Independence, called the and United Formation States OFOF, a federal. America, July 4. 1783 Treaty of Versailles, England recognized the independence of the United States of America. 1789 George Washington elected first president of the Bastille of USA Fort, beginning of French Revolution, fall, July 14. 1798 Battle of the Nile, the English under Nelson gained victory over the French. 1805 Battle of Trafalgar, death of Nelson. Battle combined of Army Austerlitz of the Russians Napoleon and the Bonaparte Austrians. Routed the 1815 Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon was defeated and exiled to St. Helena. Congress Europe, the of Vienna, its settlement aimed at rearranging proved unsatisfactory, the map of because it disregarded national claims. 1821 Death of Napoleon at St. Helena, May 5. 1827 Battle of Novatino, the Allied fleets of England, Russia and France destroyed the Turkish fleet. This victory practically 1854 the Crimean War began, Russia attacked Turkey, England and France came to the rescue of Turkey. 2. 1861 American Civil War started. Abraham Lincoln elected 16th President of USA. 1863 Slavery abolished in America. ND 1911 Chinese Republican Revolution, Amundsen reached South Russia. 53 1925 Treaty of Locarno, between Great Britain, France, Italy and Belgium. 715 World 1928 Kellogg World for Pact the signed Prevention in Paris offer, by the Etihad Principle no effect. Powers of the Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. Abyssinia War between Ethiopia, Italy and plebiscite Abyssinia in Ethiopia, Tsar. Italy annexed 1939 fall entered Germany of world France invaded war after Poland 2, June German, outbreak 11. Invasion off world, June War 5, 2, September 1st, Italy 1940 Rangoon entered islands, Hitler charter invades, August, December. World, December 7th, 14, 22, Russia War USA Japan 2 entered, June, December attack 22, 10, World airframing Pearl War raids Harbor 2 of, December. By the Japan 8, Hawaii Atlantic China. Capture of Singapore by Japanese forces, February 15th, Battle of Coral Sea, Japanese fleet suffered heavy losses at the hands of the American fleet, May 3rd, Battle of Stalingrad, September 19th. Defeat of Germany at Stalingrad, February 8th, Battle of the Bismarck Sea, America defeated Japan in a naval battle, March 4th, invasion of Italy by the Allies, armistice between Italy and the Allies, September 3rd. Allied forces landed in Normandy under the supreme command of General Ike Eisenhower, D-Day, June 6th, liberation of Paris, August 25th. Execution of Mussolini, April 22nd, unconditional surrender of Germany to the Allies, May 7th, USA dropped atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki of Japan, August 6 and August 9th, actual surrender of Japan, September 2nd, World War II ended, September 2nd, foundation of UNO, October 24th. Postmodern Harry S. Truman becomes President of USA, Clement Attlee becomes PM of UK, Cordell Hull, Secretary of State in Franklin Roosevelt administrations, awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in founding the United Nations, IMF and IBRD, World Bank, created, radiocarbon datings became available for archaeological use. Italy becomes a republic. Harry S. Truman establishes the Truman Doctrine of containment of communism, creation of the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, in USA. India gains independence from the British Empire. Ceylon Mahatma, Sri Gandhi Lanka, assassinated in Burma in Myanmar, India. Independence through the formation United of Nations of official establishes State of Israel. Israel a independence new Jewish homeland and creation of peoples of Republic NATO, partition of China of under Germany, Mao Zedong, the establishment Korean War begins. Colombo Plan comes into effect, Treaty of San Francisco between Japan and USA. Egyptian Revolution under Nasser ends British occupation, Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. Independence of Cambodia, end of Korean War, death of Stalin. First Indochina War ends. Death of Albert Einstein. Independence of the Suez Canal of Sudan triggers the Tunisia, Suez-Nasser's crisis. Nationalization 1957 Soviets launch Sputnik, space race with USA begins, independence of Ghana and Malaya. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov published, discovery of DNA structure launches genetic science, NASA founded. Independence of Cyprus, uprising in Tibet against China leads to exile of the Dalai Lama, beginning of the Vietnam War. 716, independence of 17 African nations, Mau Mau uprising of Kenya ends, Muhammad Ali wins gold in Rome. Berlin Wall erected. Independence of Algeria, Indochina War. Independence of Kenya, assassination of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr. leads civil rights. March in Washington. Civil Rights Act abolishes segregation in the USA. Second Indo-Pakistan War, Singapore gains independence. Independence of Lesotho, Botswana, and Barbados. ASEAN founded. Assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and Senator Robert F. Kennedy during the Poor People's Campaign. The first manned mission to the moon, Neil Armstrong, an American, steps out of his lunar landing module to become the first human being to set foot on the moon. Cambodian Civil War begins. Third Indo-Pakistani War, independence of Bangladesh from Pakistan and Tajuddin Ahmad becomes PM, Greenpeace founded. Munich massacre occurs at the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, Germany. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman returned to Bangladesh from imprisonment in Pakistan and became PM of Bangladesh. Watergate scandal break-in, first space station Skylab launched. Discovery of Lucy, Australopithecus africanus, in Tanzania's Oldaway Gorge. Vietnam War ends, Cambodian Civil War ends, first Cricket World Cup hosted. Death of Mao Zedong. 1978 Deng Xiaoping commences the Chinese economic reforms, war begins in Afghanistan, 1978 present. Soviet-Afghan War begins, Margaret Thatcher becomes Britain's first woman PM, implementation of China's one-child policy. Independence of Rhodesia which becomes Zimbabwe, Ronald Reagan becomes president of USA, beginning of the Iran-Iraq War. Wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana. Michael Jackson's album Thriller released. Independence of Brunei. Big famine in Ethiopia. Mikhail Gorbachev becomes premier of the Soviet Union. End of dictatorship of Marcos in the Philippines. The new Constitution of Philippines comes into effect. End of the Iran-Iraq War, George W. Bush becomes president of USA. Fall of the Berlin Wall begins / initial demolition of Berlin Wall Tiananmen Square massacre in China, end of Soviet-Afghan War. John Major becomes PM of UK, German reunification, Gulf War begins, Nelson Mandela walks out of jail after 27 years in the custody of the white apartheid government. Gulf War ends, final demolition of Berlin Wall's dissolution of the Soviet Union and independence of 15 former Soviet republics, Boris Yeltsin becomes the first president of the Russia. 1992 Maastricht Treaty creates the European Union, Bill Clinton becomes president of USA. Velvet divorce between Czech Republic and Slovakia, 1993 World Trade Center bombing. End of apartheid in South Africa and Nelson Mandela becomes president, independence of Palau. 717 Establishment of WTO, World Trade Organization, the Taliban of government Nepalese civil takes war control that have resulted Afghanistan in the beginning establishment of a secular republic in 2008 Tony Blair becomes PM of UK, Princess Diana killed in a car accident, Britain returns Hong Kong to China, Monica Lewinsky scandal. Foundation of Google by Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Euro introduced, world population reaches 6 billion. George W. Bush becomes president of USA, Vladimir Putin becomes president of Russia, I love you computer virus, Millennium Summit at UN headquarters in New York. Association of places place associated with Corsica Napoleon Bonaparte Medina Prophet Muhammad. Hiroshima dropping of the first Pearl Japan's attack during Atom Bomb Harbor World War II. Jerusalem Jesus Christ St. Helena Napoleon Bonaparte. Macedonia Alexander the Great, Trafalgar Nelson Mecca Prophet Muhammad Waterloo Napoleon Bonaparte abbreviated or alternative names abbreviated / original alternative name Apostle of Free Richard Cobden Liquan Pearl Buck Trade Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Little Corporal Napoleon Ramon Father of English Geoffrey Chaucer Maid of Orleans John of Arc Poetry Man of Blood and Bismarck Man of Destiny Napoleon Iron G. B. S. George Bernard Mark Twain Samuel Shaw Clemens Grand Old Man Gladstone Scourge of God Chiang Ai's Khan of Britain Great Commoner Pitt the younger uncle Ho Ho Chi Minh Iron Duke the Duke of Desert Fox General Rommel Kingmaker Earl of Warwick Bard of Avon Shakespeare D. Eisenhower Adolf Hitler Persians Forces, 718. Name of the battle year countries involve Spartan War I, Peloponnesian War, Spartan War II Battle of Arabia Battle of Magnesia Battle of Pharaslis Battle of Hastings 100-Year War War of the Roses Anglo-Spanish War Spanish Armada War, Battle of Gibraltar Way 30-Year War 459 BC Sparta and Athens, lasted for 30 years. 431 BC Sparta and Athens, Spartans 421 BC victorious. 331 BC Greek and Persian forces, Greeks victorious. 190 BC Syrian and Roman forces, Syrian forces defeated, northwest Lydia. 48 AD Caesar defeated Pompey. 1066 William, the Duke of Normandy defeated Harold, the King of England. England came under the control of Normans. 1338 to 1453 fought between France and England. The cause of the war was the succession question to the throne of France, which was claimed by Edward III of England. The war was resumed by Henry V and was brought to an end by the heroism of Joan of Arc, a country girl who overthrew the power of England. Joan of Arc was burnt alive at the stakes in 1431. 1455 to 1485 Civil War in England. The cause of the war was a struggle for the throne of England between the two royal houses of Lancaster and York. 1588 Spanish and English fleets fought in the English Channel, the English fleet under Lord Howard. Defeated of the Spanish Armada. 1607 The Dutch defeated the Spanish and the Portuguese. 1618 to 1648 started as religious cum political battle of Blenheim War of Austrian Succession 7-Year War, Anglo-French War 3 Battle of the Nile 1704 England and Austria headed by Marlborough defeated France and Russia. 1740 to 1748 Queen of Austria, Maria Theresa, daughter of Charles VII, was challenged by King Frederick II of Prussia. England supported the Queen and Frederick II was helped by France. Ended with a treaty which recognized the Queen's right to the throne after the death of King Frederick. 1756 to 1763 Britain and France against Austrian Prussia, the British alliance won. 1798 British and French fleets, Britain victorious. 719, world high name of the battle year countries involved. However, on reaching Moscow, his army-fated attack on Russia marked the beginning of the downfall of the French Empire. Battle of Leipzig 1813 Germany and combined forces of Austria, Prussia and Russia defeated Napoleon. Battle of Waterloo 1815 British forces led by Duke of Wellington, Sir Arthur Wellesley, defeated French forces led by Napoleon. Napoleon was captured and exiled to St. Helena where he died in 1821. First Opium War 1840 China and Britain, Chinese yielded opium. It was a trade war. Crimean War 1854 to 1856 the combined forces and off Turks the British, French defeated Russia. American Civil War 1861 to 1865 Northern states of America under the Abraham Lincolnated Southern states and established a federal state and abolished the slavery. Sino-Japanese War 1894 to 1895 Japan occupied defeated Formosa and China Korea. Battle of Omdurman 1898 the British and forces Egyptian of Khalifa forces defeated the Mahdists. 721, name of the battle year countries involved. Boer War 1899 to 1901 the revolt of Transvaal Boers was suppressed by the British forces. The Boers belonged to Dutch Protestant stock who opposed Britishers because of the abolition of slavery by Britain. Russo-Japanese War 1904 to 1905 Russia and Japan in the Sea of Battle of Port Arthur Japan. Russia defeated, it led in Battle of Yalu, Balkan War I Balkan War II World War I World War II to the wave of the idea of Asian resurgence. Turkey and Balkan countries, Montenegro, Serbia, Bulgaria and Greece, Turkey defeated. Invasion of Serbia and Greece by Bulgaria, Bulgaria was defeated by combined forces of Serbia, Greece, Romania, Montenegro who stripped Turkey of most of its European territories. 1914 to 1918 Central Powers, Germany and its allies, against the Allied powers, Britain and its allies, Central Powers were defeated. Famous battles, 1. First Battle of Marne, 1914, France defeated. Germany. 2. Battle of Jutland, 1916, naval battle between England and Germany. England defeated. Germany. 3. Battle of Verdun, 1916. Fought between France and Germany. 4. Second Battle of Marne, 1918, France defeated Germany. 1939 to 1945 Axis powers, Germany and its allies, against the Allied powers, Britain and its allies, Axis powers were defeated. Famous battle, Battle of El Alamein, 1942, the Allies' victory during the World War II and retreat of General Rommel's forces.